He left $30,000 as bait to catch his cleaning lady stealing. Her dying daughter needed that exact amount. What she did next destroyed him, and revealed a truth about human dignity that his wealth could never buy. In the frozen shadows of a dawn that promised devastating revelations, Thaddeus Crawford stared at the ceiling of his bedroom with eyes burning from exhaustion and a soul torn apart by doubt. 3 consecutive nights without managing to close his eyes. 3 nights tormented by the same question that corroded his heart like acid. Could Marlena, the cleaning lady in whom he had placed absolute trust for 9 months, really be a thief? "It can't be," he murmured with a hoarse voice, turning for the 1,000th time between sheets that cost more than most people's annual salary. It can't be true. At 42, Thaddeus had built a $600 million empire, managing Manhattan's wealthiest fortunes. His $8 million penthouse proved his success. But that dawn, all his money couldn't buy the peace his mind desperately sought. The bathroom mirror reflected a defeated man. Dark circles, unshaven face, disheveled hair. Nothing like the confident businessman on magazine covers. "Father was right," he whispered. "You can't trust anyone when money is involved." But something inside him resisted accepting this bitter truth. Hours later, when the sun began to paint the sky, Thaddeus turned off his alarm with a heavy sigh. 6 in the morning. In 2 hours, Marlena would arrive. Today, all doubts would be answered. He descended the marble staircase, each step echoing through the empty penthouse. The gourmet kitchen seemed cold, despite its luxury. He prepared strong coffee, needing caffeine for what would come. His hands trembled, not from cold, but anticipation mixed with dread. $30,000, he murmured, the amount sitting on his tongue like poison. If she really is a thief, she won't be able to resist. He walked to his private office, where the embedded safe guarded amounts that would make entire families live comfortably for years. He typed the code with mechanical fingers, watching the reinforced door open with a soft, revealing click. Inside, organized stacks of $100 bills rested in perfect piles. Thaddeus withdrew exactly 30,000, 300 bills, representing nearly 2 years of salary for someone like Marlena. Back in the main living room, he spread the money deliberately over the coffee table, creating a scene that appeared careless but was carefully calculated. Some bills fallen on the floor, others stacked loosely, others scattered, as if someone had counted them and abandoned them in haste. The security cameras were already strategically positioned, one disguised in the wall clock, another hidden among the books on the shelf, a third camouflaged in the artificial flower arrangement. 3 different angles capturing every inch of the room in high definition. "Forgive me, Marlena," he whispered to the oppressive emptiness, "but I need to know the truth." He sat on the Italian leather sofa, adjusting himself in a position that would appear natural for someone who had accidentally fallen asleep. He covered himself partially with a light throw, leaving his face slightly visible. He closed his eyes, controlling his breathing to simulate the deep sleep of someone exhausted, and he began to wait. While pretending to sleep, memories invaded his mind. 9 months ago, Marlena had appeared through a domestic services agency. Something about her had immediately captured his attention, a silent dignity that emanated from her like light. "Mr. Crawford," she had said with a firm yet respectful voice, her Polish accent still present, "I am not just a cleaning lady. I care for places as if they were mine." She had fulfilled that promise perfectly. But it was more than efficiency. Marlena brought warmth to that enormous, frequently empty house. Small gestures stood out. Fresh flowers from the corner market, arranged with artistic taste, classical music playing softly while she worked. The way she folded his clothes with care, as if each piece mattered. But 3 weeks ago, everything started to crumble. The first sign was subtle. A vintage Rolex that belonged to his late father vanished. Then came other disappearances: gold cufflinks, 2 bottles of rare wine, a crystal paperweight. He had mentioned it to Marlena one morning, watching for guilt or nervousness. "Have you seen my father's watch?" Her reaction seemed genuine, eyes widening with concern, immediate willingness to help search. "No, Mr. Crawford, but I'll keep my eyes open while cleaning." For days, she helped him search. Her dedication appeared authentic, her worry palpable, but the items never reappeared. Thaddeus had hired a private investigator discreetly. The report arrived just 2 days ago, and the information had destroyed him inside. Marlena Thorne, 38 years old, single mother of 7-year-old Iris. They lived in a cramped Queens apartment. She worked as a cleaning lady in 3 homes to manage bills. No criminal records, no suspicious debts, nothing indicating dishonesty. But there was something that tore Thaddeus's heart. Iris was gravely ill. She needed emergency heart surgery costing approximately $30,000. Exactly the amount Thaddeus had spread across the table as bait. In the present, still pretending to sleep, minutes dragged with torturous slowness. Thaddeus controlled his breathing, keeping his eyes closed, muscles relaxed. Each second felt like an eternity of anxiety. 7:55 in the morning. Marlena always arrived punctually at 8. The distant sound of a key in the lock made his heart race like a war drum. Those soft, familiar footsteps crossed the entrance hall. The door closed with a delicate click. "Mr. Crawford." Marlena's voice echoed through the penthouse, as it did every morning to check if he was home. Silence. Thaddeus maintained his deep, regular breathing. The footsteps approached the living room. He could sense her presence even with closed eyes, that warm energy she always brought with her. "Oh," Marlena murmured softly, clearly surprised to see him sleeping on the sofa. What happened in the next seconds would change absolutely everything. Thaddeus could hear her moving silently through the room, the soft rustle of her bag being placed on the floor, her gentle footsteps approaching the table where the money was blatantly exposed. The silence that followed was deafening. Thaddeus fought against every fiber of his being that wanted to open his eyes and see what was happening, but he needed to let the scene unfold naturally, without interference. He expected to hear the sound of paper being handled. He expected to hear Marlena taking the money, hiding it in her bag. He expected to have his worst suspicion confirmed and his heart finally broken. But what he heard was completely different. It was the unmistakable sound of someone crying softly, not crying from guilt or nervousness. It was crying from pure pain and absolute despair. "Please, God." Marlena's voice trembled in a whispered prayer that tore Thaddeus's soul. "I need this money so much for my Iris. But I cannot. Thaddeus felt his chest tighten violently. Those words carried a weight of suffering he had never experienced in his entire life of privileges. "No matter how desperate I am," Marlena continued, crying softly, speaking to herself or to God, "I cannot steal. I cannot teach this to my daughter. I cannot." The sound of footsteps moving away from the table, the soft creak of the cleaning closet door opening, the familiar clinking of cleaning products being organized. Marlena had seen $30,000, exactly the amount that would save her daughter's life, and had chosen to begin her work without touching a single penny. Tears began to flow silently down Thaddeus's face as he continued pretending to sleep. They weren't tears of relief at discovering she was honest. They were tears of absolute shame for having doubted her. They were tears of horror for having set up this cruel trap. They were tears of shock upon realizing the devastating level of desperation Marlena was facing in silence. And most painful of all, they were tears of sudden and terrible understanding. If Marlena wasn't stealing anything, then who was? The answer hit him like a bolt of ice directly to the heart. There was only one other person with access to his home, one other person who knew where he kept valuable items, one other person who might have reason to want Marlena gone, his housekeeper's 19-year-old nephew, Derek, whom Thaddeus had hired part-time as a favor, the young man who had started working in the building's maintenance just 2 months ago. The same young man whom Marlena had gently but firmly corrected several times about respecting boundaries and being professional. The realization crashed over Thaddeus like a tidal wave. Derek had been stealing, and when he feared being discovered, he had found the perfect scapegoat, the immigrant cleaning lady who no one would believe over a charming American college student. Thaddeus remained lying on the sofa, pretending to sleep, while his world collapsed around him, and Marlena Thorne, the most honest woman he had ever known, cleaned his penthouse crying silently for a daughter who was dying. During the 2 hours that changed everything forever, Thaddeus remained motionless, every muscle tense like barbed wire, while pretending a sleep that was miles away. His mind spun in frantic circles, processing the devastating discovery. Marlena moved through the house with silent efficiency. The soft sound of the broom, the delicate rustling of cleaning cloths, the fresh scent of lavender. Everything so familiar, everything so honest, everything so painfully dignified. How could I doubt her? The thought hammered his conscience without mercy. How could I be so blind, so cruel? Through his closed eyelids, he could perceive when she passed near the sofa. He felt the extreme care with which she moved so as not to wake him, the affection with which she adjusted the throw over his body, the pure kindness that emanated from each of her gestures. And then, in a moment that ripped his heart in half, Marlena stopped beside the sofa for a few seconds that seemed like eternities. Thaddeus could sense her presence close, almost hear the thoughts crossing her tormented mind. "Mr. Crawford," she whispered so softly he almost didn't hear. "You are a good man. You don't deserve to have a thief working in your home." The tears threatened to overflow from Thaddeus's closed eyes. She was blaming herself. She was thinking she had disappointed his trust somehow. "I will leave as soon as I finish today," Marlena continued in a whispered monologue of pure pain. "I will spare you the embarrassment of firing me. I know you must have noticed that things have been disappearing." Thaddeus's breathing almost failed. She knew about the accusations. She knew she was being blamed. And even so, she continued working with that unshakable dignity. "Iris, my little girl," Marlena's voice broke completely. "Mommy is going to lose another job because of accusations she doesn't understand. But Mommy will never steal, my princess. I will never teach you that it's okay to be dishonest just because we're desperate." The sound of her footsteps moving away left Thaddeus completely shattered. Every word she had said was like glass being pressed against his heart. The weight of his mistake crushed him like a physical force. He had failed Marlena in the most fundamental way. He had allowed suspicion to poison his perception of the most honest person he had ever met. But worse than that, he had failed to protect her from false accusations. He had failed to investigate properly. He had failed to see that someone else was manipulating the situation. And now, lying there, pretending to sleep while she cleaned his home, crying silently. Thaddeus Crawford, the brilliant businessman who managed millions, felt smaller than an insect, because all his intelligence, all his money, all his success meant nothing if he couldn't recognize genuine character when it was right in front of him. The realization settled into his bones with the weight of absolute truth. Marlena Thorne, with her calloused hands and humble circumstances, possessed something infinitely more valuable than all the wealth in his bank accounts. She possessed dignity that survived even when the world gave her every excuse to abandon it. And that dignity, maintained in the face of desperate circumstances and unjust accusations, was the most profound lesson Thaddeus Crawford had ever received. A lesson that would cost him everything he thought he knew about himself, and force him to confront uncomfortable truths about the man he had become. Thaddeus finally couldn't take it anymore. The weight of watching Marlena clean while carrying such pain became unbearable. Every sound, the gentle swish of the mop, the soft clink of bottles, the whispered Polish lullaby, was a knife twisting into his conscience. He had to end this charade immediately. Slowly, he allowed his eyes to flutter open as if naturally waking. He stretched with calculated movements, making soft, groaning sounds that would seem authentic. Marlena was across the room, wiping down the windows with methodical precision. Her back was to him, but he could see the tension in her shoulders, the slight tremor in her hands. She was still crying, trying desperately to hide it. "Marlena!" His voice came out rougher than intended, thick with suppressed emotion. She jumped slightly, dropping the cloth. When she turned around, her face was quickly schooled into professional pleasantness, but her eyes betrayed everything. They were red, swollen, devastated. "Mr. Crawford," she said, forcing brightness into her tone. "I'm so sorry. Did I wake you? I tried to be quiet." "No, you didn't wake me." He sat up slowly, the throw sliding off his shoulders. "Marlena, please, come here. I need to talk to you." Something in his voice, the heaviness, the barely contained emotion, made her freeze. Her hands clutched the cleaning cloth like a lifeline, knuckles white with pressure. "Mr. Crawford, if this is about—" "Please," he interrupted gently, patting the space beside him on the sofa. "Just, please sit with me for a moment." Marlena hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the informality. In 9 months, she had never sat on his furniture, never crossed that invisible line between employer and employee, but something in his expression, pain mixed with urgency, made her slowly approach. She perched on the edge of the sofa, spine rigid, hands folded tightly in her lap. Everything about her posture screamed discomfort and fear. "Marlena," Thaddeus began, his throat constricting around the words, "I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen to everything before you respond. Can you do that?" She nodded, confusion flickering across her tear-stained face. "I wasn't sleeping just now." The words hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Marlena's eyes widened slightly, processing, connecting dots she didn't want to connect. "I was awake the entire time," Thaddeus continued, each word feeling like broken glass in his mouth. "I was pretending to sleep, watching you through the security cameras I installed." He watched the realization dawn across her face like a sunrise made of horror. Her breath caught audibly, her hands began to shake violently. "The money on the table," he forced himself to continue despite seeing the devastation in her eyes. "I put it there deliberately. $30,000. I was testing you." The sound that escaped Marlena's throat was barely human, a sound of raw pain, of pure betrayal. She stood abruptly, stumbling backward as if he'd physically struck her. "You tested me?" Her voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of a scream, like I was some kind of rat in a laboratory. "Marlena, please, let me explain." "You thought I was a thief!" The words exploded from her with volcanic force. "You set up cameras. You put money there to tempt me. You... She couldn't finish. Tears streamed down her face, not the quiet, controlled crying from earlier, but raw, unfiltered sobs that shook her entire body. "After 9 months, she gasped between sobs, "after cleaning your home like it was sacred, after treating your possessions with more care than my own, you thought I would steal from you? I know how it looks." "You know nothing!" Marlena's voice rose to a pitch Thaddeus had never heard from her, raw and primal. "You know nothing about what it means to be looked at with suspicion every single day of your life." She paced like a caged animal, hands gesturing wildly, words pouring out in torrents of pain built over years. "Do you know what it's like, Mr. Crawford, to clean 3 houses every day? To see wealth that could change my life? To polish diamond rings left on sinks? To organize cash scattered like garbage?" Thaddeus opened his mouth, but she cut him off with a sharp gesture. "I have touched millions in valuables, millions. Jewelry, cash, watches, art, things people don't remember they own." Her voice cracked. "And you know what I do? I organize them, protect them, treat them better than their owners do." She faced him, and the look in her eyes nearly destroyed him. Not just hurt, profound disappointment from shattered faith. "But none of that mattered, did it? Because in your eyes, I'm just the poor immigrant cleaning lady. Easy to suspect, easy to doubt, easy to test. That's not... My daughter is dying! The scream tore from her throat. Iris is dying, and I saw $30,000, exactly what I need, and I didn't touch it. Marlena collapsed onto the sofa, strength gone. She buried her face in her hands, shoulders heaving with sobs from somewhere deep and ancient. I could have taken it, she whispered through her fingers. I could have saved my baby and you wouldn't have noticed. But I didn't, because I'd rather watch my daughter suffer than see a thief in the mirror. Thaddeus felt tears streaming down his own face. Every word she spoke was a whip against his conscience. And you know what hurts most? Marlena looked up, her face anguished. It's not the test. It's not the suspicion. It's that you who I thought was different, you reduced me to a stereotype, to someone who would steal because I'm desperate. Marlena, I'm so deeply sorry. Sorry? She laughed bitterly. How do you apologize for this? How do you repair destroyed trust? How do you heal this humiliation? They sat in crushing silence, broken only by Marlena's quieting sobs. Finally, Thaddeus found his voice. You're right, he said quietly, about everything. I was cruel. I was blind. I let paranoia corrupt my judgment. He faced her fully. But I need you to know something I discovered while lying there. She looked at him warily, guardedly, as if expecting another blow. You weren't stealing anything, he continued, voice thick with shame. I know that now, the moment I heard you crying, refusing money that would save your daughter. Then who? Derek. The name dropped like a stone. Marlena's expression shifted from confusion to shock to understanding. My nephew, Derek, she whispered. Yes. I reviewed all security footage, every missing item, the watch, cufflinks, wine. He took everything. Sold it online for cash. Marlena's hand flew to her mouth. Why blame me? Because you called him out on his behavior, Thaddeus explained, anger creeping in, not at her, at himself. You told him he was disrespectful. You corrected his shortcuts. You treated him like he needed to earn respect. Understanding flooded her features. So he wanted me gone. Yes, and he knew how. Plant suspicion, let it grow. Wait for me to fire you. Thaddeus's hands clenched, and I almost fell for it. Heavy silence settled. Outside, New York sounds filtered through. Sirens, horns, life continuing while their world had stopped. What happens now? Marlena finally asked, her voice hollow and exhausted. Thaddeus stood and walked to the table where the $30,000 still lay scattered. He gathered it carefully, organizing the bills into a neat stack, then returned and held it out to her. This is yours, for Iris's surgery. Marlena stared at the money as if it were a snake. I don't want your charity, Mr. Crawford. It's not charity, he insisted, pushing the stack toward her. It's compensation. It's the absolute minimum I can do after doubting your honesty and putting you through this nightmare. I can't accept it, she said firmly, crossing her arms defensively. If I take that money, I'll spend the rest of my life feeling like I stole it after all. The logic was devastating in its simplicity. Thaddeus had corrupted even his attempt at making amends. Then call it a loan. He pivoted quickly, desperation creeping into his voice. You can pay me back whenever you're able, with or without interest, whatever makes you comfortable. Marlena studied him for a long moment, clearly torn between crushing pride and maternal desperation. Mr. Crawford, why are you doing this? She asked quietly. Why do you care so much about fixing this? Because, he said, his voice cracking with emotion, in the space of 2 hours, you taught me more about character and dignity than I've learned in 42 years of life. He sat down beside her again, close enough that she could see every line of regret etched into his face. I've spent my entire adult life chasing success, building wealth, accumulating power and influence, and somewhere along the way, I forgot what actually matters. Thaddeus gestured around the luxurious penthouse. All of this, the money, the apartment, the expensive things, none of it means anything if I can't recognize genuine integrity when it's standing right in front of me." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "You could have taken that money. You could have saved your daughter, and I would never have known. But you chose honor over desperation. You chose teaching your daughter the right values over saving her life through dishonest means." Tears were flowing freely down his face now. "That kind of character, that's priceless. That's something all my wealth could never buy or build, and I almost destroyed it with my suspicion and cruelty." Marlena's own tears started again, but these were different, softer, mixed with something that might have been understanding or forgiveness beginning to take root. "Mr. Crawford," she said slowly, "my mother used to tell me something when I was young. She said that people reveal their true selves, not in comfort, but in crisis, not when things are easy, but when everything is falling apart." She reached out tentatively and took the money from his hands, holding it against her chest like a precious, fragile thing. "This morning you revealed something about yourself too," she continued. "You revealed that you're capable of recognizing your mistakes, of feeling genuine remorse, of wanting to make things right even when it's painful. That doesn't excuse what I did." "No," she agreed, "it doesn't. But it tells me that maybe you're worth giving a second chance to." Hope flickered in Thaddeus's chest, fragile as a candle flame in wind. "I'll take the money," Marlena said firmly, "as a loan, like you said, and I'll pay back every single penny, even if it takes me the rest of my life." "Thank you," Thaddeus breathed. "Thank you for giving me the chance to do at least this one thing right." Marlena stood, clutching the money, her posture somehow both defeated and determined. "I need to go now. I need to get to the hospital and schedule Iris's surgery." "Of course, go. Take all the time you need." She walked toward the door, then paused and turned back. "Mr. Crawford, about my job here." Thaddeus's heart clenched. This was it, the moment she would quit, and he would deserve it completely. "Yes? Do you still want me to work for you?" The question stunned him. After everything, after the betrayal and humiliation, she was asking if he still wanted her services. "Marlena, yes, God, yes. If you can possibly find it in your heart to continue working here, I would be honored. But I would completely understand if—" "I need the job," she said simply. "The surgery will create debts that will take years to pay off. I can't afford to lose this income." She smiled sadly. "Besides, I think maybe we both learned something important today, about trust, about character, about second chances." With that, she left, and Thaddeus was alone with his thoughts and the weight of lessons learned through profound pain. Outside the window, the city continued its relentless rhythm, indifferent to the small human drama that had just unfolded. But inside that expensive penthouse, something fundamental had shifted. A wealthy man had learned humility. A proud woman had accepted help. And both had discovered that true value has nothing to do with money. The subway rattled through underground tunnels, carrying Marlena toward Queens with $30,000 pressed against her chest like a sacred relic. She clutched her worn purse with both hands, eyes darting nervously at every passenger who came too close, terrified that someone might sense the fortune she carried. Her reflection in the darkened window showed a woman transformed. The tears had dried, leaving salt tracks on her cheeks that pulled tight against her skin. Her eyes held a wild mixture of hope and terror. Hope that Iris might finally get the surgery that would save her life. Terror that this might all be some cruel dream from which she'd wake to find nothing changed. Around her, morning commuters buried themselves in phones and newspapers, oblivious to the miracle unfolding in their midst. An elderly man dozed in the corner. Two teenagers argued about a video game. A young mother struggled with a fussy toddler. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that the exhausted woman clutching a purse held the difference between life and death in her hands. "Please, God," She whispered in Polish, the language of her childhood prayers, "Let this be real. Let my baby live. I will work every day for the rest of my life to deserve this chance." The train lurched to a stop. Jackson Heights. Her stop. Marlena pushed through the crowded car, murmuring apologies in accented English as she squeezed past morning commuters who barely acknowledged her existence. Up the stairs, into sunlight that felt too bright for the gravity of what she carried. The walk to her apartment building took 7 minutes. 7 minutes during which she checked the money 3 times, convinced it might have vanished like morning mist. Her hands shook as she unlocked the apartment door. "Mama!" Iris's voice came from the small bedroom, weak but filled with joy. "You're home early." Marlena closed the door, leaning against it for support, as emotions threatened to overwhelm her completely. She had left at dawn to clean Thaddeus's penthouse, expecting another day of backbreaking work and worry. Instead, she returned with salvation in her purse and devastation in her heart. "Mama?" Iris appeared in the bedroom doorway, her small frame swallowed by an oversized nightgown. At 7 years old, she should have been running, playing, living. Instead, she moved slowly, carefully, as if her body might break from too much exertion. Marlena dropped to her knees, opening her arms. Iris shuffled forward and melted into her mother's embrace, her heart beating against Marlena's chest, that precious, fragile heart that had been failing since birth. The feel of her daughter's small body, so light it seemed she might float away, filled Marlena with familiar terror. Every embrace could be the last. Every good-night kiss might be final. For 7 years, she had lived with this knowledge pressing down on her like stones. "Why are you crying, Mama?" Iris asked, her thin fingers wiping tears from Marlena's face with the gentleness that broke hearts. "Did something bad happen at work?" "No, my love," Marlena choked out, holding her daughter as if she might disappear. Something incredible happened, something wonderful." She pulled back, cupping Iris's pale face in her hands, memorizing every detail, the dark eyes that mirrored her own, the freckles scattered across her nose, the lips that smiled despite constant pain. "We're going to the hospital today," Marlena said, her voice trembling with barely controlled emotion. "We're going to schedule your surgery." Iris's eyes widened. "Really? You have the money?" The question, so simple, so devastating in its childish understanding of their poverty, nearly broke Marlena. 7 years old, and Iris already knew that her life depended on money her mother didn't have. "Yes, baby. I have the money." "Did you win the lottery?" Iris asked, with the innocent logic of a child. Marlena smiled through tears. "Something like that." 2 hours later, at Queen's General Hospital, the pediatric cardiology department smelled of antiseptic and fear, familiar scents that Marlena had come to associate with her daughter's fragile existence. They sat in the waiting area, Iris coloring in a donated coloring book, while Marlena filled out paperwork with trembling hands. Ms. Thorne, a nurse, appeared, clipboard in hand, expression professionally neutral. "Dr. Chen can see you now." They followed her down corridors, lined with cheerful murals, meant to disguise the serious business of saving children's lives. Dr. Chen's office was small but tidy, walls covered with certificates and children's thank-you drawings. Dr. Patricia Chen stood when they entered, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and grey streaks in her black hair. She had been Iris's cardiologist for 3 years, had delivered the devastating diagnosis, had watched helplessly as Marlena struggled to raise money for the surgery that might save her daughter. "Marlena," Dr. Chen said warmly, shaking her hand before kneeling to Iris's level. "And how are you feeling today, sweetheart?" "Tired," Iris admitted with heartbreaking honesty. "But Mama says I can get my surgery now." "Doctor." Chen's eyes snapped to Marlena's, surprise and hope warring in her expression. "Is this true?" Marlena opened her purse with shaking hands and withdrew the envelope of cash. "I have $30,000 in cash. Is that enough to schedule the surgery?" The doctor's professional composure cracked slightly. She had seen too many families unable to afford necessary procedures, had watched too many children deteriorate, while parents desperately tried to raise funds through bake sales and crowdfunding campaigns. "Yes," Dr. Chen said, her voice thick. "Yes, that's enough for the deposit. Insurance should cover the rest." Marlena nearly collapsed with relief. "When can we do it, Doctor?" Chen pulled up Iris's file on her computer, fingers flying across the keyboard. "Let me check the surgical schedule. We've had you on the priority list for months, waiting for funding." The minutes stretched like hours while the doctor searched. Iris hummed softly, coloring a picture of a heart, the organ that was failing her, rendered in cheerful crayons by innocent hands. "I can get you in next Friday, Doctor," Chen finally announced, looking up from the screen with barely contained emotion. "Dr. Rodriguez is one of the best pediatric cardiac surgeons in the country. He's performed this procedure hundreds of times with excellent outcomes." Next Friday, 7 days away. After 3 years of waiting, of watching her daughter grow weaker, of lying awake at night, listening to make sure Iris was still breathing, 7 days felt like both an eternity and a heartbeat. What are her chances? Marlena asked the question that had haunted her for years, the question she'd been too afraid to ask, when the answer might be hopeless. Dr. Chen's expression grew serious. "I won't lie to you. It's a complicated surgery, but without it," she glanced at Iris, then back to Marlena. "Without it, she has maybe 6 months. With successful surgery, she could live a completely normal life." 6 months. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. "What do I need to do?" Marlena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sign consent forms, complete pre-surgical testing. Bring Iris in Thursday night for prep." Dr. Chen reached across the desk, placing her hand over Marlena's. "And pray. I always tell families to pray." Marlena nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Across town, in a luxury penthouse on the Upper East Side, Thaddeus stood in his home office, staring at the security footage playing on his computer screen. Hours of video showing Derek, charming, smiling Derek, systematically stealing from him. There, the 19-year-old entering the office, looking around nervously before opening the desk drawer and pocketing the gold cufflinks. Another clip showing him in the wine cellar, selecting bottles with the confidence of someone who knew expensive labels. A third video capturing him photographing items to list online. Thaddeus's phone buzzed. A text from his head of security. "Derek Michaels, currently on duty, maintenance room, basement level." He stood, straightening his tie with mechanical precision. The confrontation he was about to have required a clear head and controlled rage. Derek had almost destroyed an innocent woman's life to cover his theft. That kind of calculated cruelty deserved consequences. The elevator descended silently to the basement. Thaddeus's reflection in the polished doors showed a man transformed from this morning. No longer tormented by doubt, but hardened by righteous anger. The maintenance room was tucked away in the building's underbelly, a utilitarian space filled with cleaning supplies and mechanical equipment. Derek sat on a stool, scrolling through his phone, earbuds in, completely oblivious to the storm approaching. Thaddeus yanked the door open. Derek jumped, earbuds flying. "Mr. Crawford!" The young man's face arranged itself into an expression of pleasant surprise. "I didn't expect to see you down here. Is everything okay with your unit?" "No, Derek, everything is not okay." Something in Thaddeus's tone made Derek's smile falter. "Sir, I reviewed the security footage." Thaddeus spoke with lethal calm. "All of it. Every moment of you stealing from me over the past 2 months." The blood drained from Derek's face. His mouth opened, closed, opened again like a fish drowning in air. I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't insult my intelligence." Thaddeus pulled out his phone, swiping through screenshots. "Here's you taking my father's watch. Here's you in the wine cellar. Here's you photographing items for your online listings." Derek backed against the wall, hands raised defensively. "Mr. Crawford, I can explain." You can explain how you were willing to destroy Marlena's reputation to save yourself. Thaddeus advanced slowly, each word measured and sharp. How you let me believe that an honest, hard-working woman was a thief while you systematically robbed me? It wasn't like that. What was it like then? Thaddeus demanded. Enlighten me. Tell me how framing an innocent single mother for your crimes was somehow justified. Derek's face crumpled. The charming college boy facade shattered, revealing something desperate and ugly underneath. I needed the money. Do you know what it's like to be surrounded by wealth every day, to see people who don't appreciate what they have? So you stole. You have millions. Derek's voice rose defensively. You wouldn't even notice a few missing items, but I'm drowning in student loans, working 2 jobs, barely surviving. And Marlena? Thaddeus asked coldly. What's her excuse for surviving? She works 3 jobs, has a dying daughter, lives in poverty. Yet she didn't steal from me. Derek had no answer. His shoulders sagged, his eyes dropped to the floor. She saw $30,000 this morning, Thaddeus continued, his voice dropping to something dangerous. Money that would save her daughter's life. And she didn't take it. Because she has something you'll never understand. Integrity. I'm sorry, Derek whispered. I'm so sorry. Sorry isn't enough. Thaddeus pulled out his phone again. I'm calling the police. You're going to confess everything. You're going to clear Marlena's name, and you're going to accept whatever consequences come. Please, Derek dropped to his knees, tears streaming. Please don't call the cops. I'll pay you back. I'll work for free. I'll do anything. You should have thought about that before you destroyed someone's reputation. Thaddeus dialed 3 numbers that would change Derek's life forever. 911. As he waited for the operator to answer, Thaddeus felt no satisfaction, no triumph, only a hollow sadness for how easily people sacrifice their character when tested, and how rarely they recognize genuine integrity when confronted with it. The operator's voice came through. 911, what's your emergency? I need to report a theft, Thaddeus said calmly, his eyes never leaving Derek's devastated face. And clear an innocent woman's name. Back at Queen's General Hospital, Marlena held Iris's hand as they walked slowly out of Dr. Chen's office, surgical consent forms signed, pre-op appointment scheduled, hope blazing in their hearts like wildfire. Mama, Iris said softly, after my surgery, when I'm better, can we go to the park, like normal families? The question shattered something in Marlena's chest. Her daughter's definition of normal, going to a park, something most children took for granted, was an impossible dream for a child whose heart couldn't handle exertion. Yes, my love, Marlena promised, tears streaming freely now. After your surgery, we'll go to every park in New York City. We'll run and play and live. Iris smiled, that radiant smile that made every sacrifice, every hardship, every humiliation worthwhile. I can't wait to live, Mama. Neither could Marlena. Neither could Marlena. The days before the surgery crawled by with agonizing slowness. Each hour waited with anticipation and terror. Monday morning arrived with autumn rain drumming against windows, and Marlena stood outside Thaddeus's building, her hand hovering over the entrance buzzer. She had promised to return to work, had accepted his money as a loan, had agreed to give him a second chance. But standing here now, rain soaking through her thin jacket, the humiliation of that cruel test felt fresh and raw. Her finger pressed the button before her courage could fail. Yes? The doorman's voice crackled through the intercom. Marlena Thorne, I'm here to clean Mr. Crawford's apartment. A pause. Then, come up, Miss Thorne. He's expecting you. The elevator ride to the penthouse felt longer than usual. Marlena watched the numbers climb, 30 floors separating her world from his, and wondered how she would face him after everything that had happened. The elevator doors opened directly into his foyer. Thaddeus stood waiting, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater that probably cost more than her monthly rent. His eyes were shadowed, his face drawn with what looked like sleepless nights. Marlena. Her name came out rough, uncertain. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would." "I gave my word." She stepped into the apartment, keeping her distance, her posture rigid with carefully maintained dignity. "I know. It's just after everything." He trailed off, running a hand through his hair in a gesture of frustration. "Can we talk, please? Just for a few minutes before you start working." Marlena wanted to refuse, wanted to maintain the professional distance that would protect what remained of her pride. But something in his expression, genuine remorse mixed with desperate hope, made her nod. They sat in the living room where the test had occurred, the morning light painting everything in shades of grey that matched the emotional landscape between them. "Derek was arrested Friday afternoon," Thaddeus began without preamble. "He confessed to everything. The police have it all on record. His theft, his manipulation, his plan to frame you." Marlena's hands twisted in her lap. "Thank you for that. For clearing my name. It's the absolute minimum I should have done." Thaddeus leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Marlena, I've been thinking about what you said, about how I saw you as a stereotype instead of a person. Mr. Crawford, please, let me finish." He took a shaky breath. "My wife died 5 years ago. Car accident. Instant. One moment she existed, the next she was gone." And the unexpected confession hung between them. Marlena remained silent, sensing this was important. "After she died, I threw myself into work. Built walls. Stopped trusting people. Stopped seeing people, really. Just saw functions, roles, potential threats." His voice cracked slightly. "Somewhere along the way, I stopped being human and became just successful, rich, empty." He looked up at her and his eyes were wet. "You were right about me, about how I reduced you to a statistic, but you were wrong about one thing." "What?" "You said I thought you would steal because you were desperate, but the truth is worse." Thaddeus's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "I tested you because I was desperate to confirm that nobody is trustworthy, that my cynicism was justified, that building walls around my heart was the right choice." Marlena felt something shift in her chest, not forgiveness exactly, but understanding beginning to take root. "When you didn't take that money," he continued, "when you chose integrity over saving your daughter's life, you destroyed every excuse I'd built for not trusting people, and that terrified me more than any theft could have." The silence that followed was different from before, less hostile, more contemplative. "My daughter asks me about you," Marlena said, finally, surprising herself. "She wants to know about the man who gave us the money for her surgery." Thaddeus's eyes widened. "What do you tell her?" "The truth. That you made a mistake. That you're trying to fix it." Marlena met his gaze directly. "She said everyone deserves a second chance. She's 7 years old and dying, and she understands forgiveness better than most adults." "She sounds remarkable." "She is." Marlena's voice softened with maternal love. "She draws hearts everywhere, on paper, in condensation on windows, in the dust on tables. Hearts with wings. She says when hers is fixed, it will be strong enough to fly." Thaddeus had to look away, emotions too raw to contain. "When is the surgery?" "Friday. This Friday." The words carried the weight of hope and terror. 4 days from now. Is there anything I can do? Anything you need?" Marlena considered this. Pride warred with practicality. Finally, practicality won. Could I leave early on Thursday? I need to get Iris to the hospital by evening for pre-op." "Of course, and Marlena," he hesitated, "would it be okay if I came to the hospital? I'd like to be there, if you're comfortable with that." The request surprised her. "Why?" "Because I need to see this through," he said simply. "I was part of your suffering. I'd like to be part of your hope too." Marlena studied him for a long moment, searching for manipulation or ulterior motives. She found only sincerity and tentative hope. "You can come," she said finally. "Iris would like that. She's always wanted to meet someone famous." "I'm not famous." To a 7-year-old who sees you in business magazines at the doctor's office, you're practically royalty. The ghost of a smile touched Marlena's lips, the first one she'd managed in his presence since the test. Over the next 3 days, something unexpected happened. Thaddeus began working from home, his presence a constant background to Marlena's cleaning routine. But unlike before, he didn't just exist in separate spaces. He talked to her, asked questions, listened to answers. Tuesday, while she cleaned the kitchen, he made coffee and actually offered her a cup, something he'd never done in 9 months. "How do you take it?" he asked, holding the expensive Italian machine's steam wand uncertainly. "Black is fine." She watched him fumble with the unfamiliar appliance. "You don't know how to use your own coffee maker?" "I usually just buy it." He laughed ruefully. "Ridiculous, isn't it? I have a $5,000 machine and no idea how it works." "Let me show you." Without thinking, Marlena stepped beside him, guiding his hands through the process. "See? Not complicated, just wasteful to pay $10 for something you can make for 50 cents. He made them both cups, and they stood in his kitchen drinking coffee together, employer and employee, but also two people sharing a moment of simple human connection. Wednesday, Marlena found him going through old photo albums in his study. "Your wife?" she asked, seeing the beautiful blonde woman who appeared throughout the photos. "Catherine." His voice carried years of grief. "She would have liked you. She always said I needed people in my life who weren't afraid to tell me the truth." Marlena studied the photos. Catherine's smile was genuine, reaching her eyes in a way that spoke of deep happiness. "She looks like she loved life." She did. She laughed at everything, found joy in stupid things, funny-shaped vegetables, terrible puns, pigeons fighting over bread. Thaddeus traced one photo with his finger. "After she died, the world felt colorless. I forgot how to find joy in small things. When my husband left me pregnant with Iris," Marlena offered quietly, "I thought my life was over. I was 17, alone in a new country, carrying a baby with health problems. But Iris," her voice grew stronger, "Iris taught me that joy isn't about circumstances. It's about choosing to see light, even in darkness." "Is that how you stayed so honest? Even when being dishonest would have saved her?" "No. Marlena shook her head. "I stayed honest because if I'd stolen that money, I would have lost myself. And then, what would I have taught my daughter? That integrity is negotiable? That desperate circumstances justify any action?" She set down her cleaning supplies, turning to face him fully. "Mr. Crawford, Iris might die Friday. The surgery might fail. But if it does, she'll die knowing her mother was a woman of principle. That has to be enough." Thursday morning arrived too quickly. Marlena moved through Thaddeus's apartment in a daze, her mind at the hospital already, running through everything that could go wrong, every complication Dr. Chen had mentioned, every terrible possibility. "Marlena," Thaddeus's voice broke through her spiraling thoughts. "You're cleaning the same window for the 3rd time." She looked down, surprised to find her cloth moving in circles that had left the glass spotless 5 minutes ago. "I'm sorry. I can't focus. I need to get Iris to the hospital by 6, and I keep thinking," her voice broke, "what if this is our last day together? What if I'm spending it here instead of with her? Then go." Thaddeus took the cloth from her trembling hands. "Go home. Be with your daughter. I'll pay you for the full day. I can't just—" "You can. You must." He squeezed her shoulders gently. "Marlena, some things are more important than work. Your daughter needs you. Go." Marlena left without another word, practically running to the elevator. That evening at Queen's General Hospital, Iris lay in a pediatric bed, wearing a hospital gown decorated with cartoon characters, an IV already threading into her thin arm. She looked impossibly small against the white sheets, her dark eyes too large in her pale face. Marlena sat beside her, holding her daughter's free hand, memorizing every detail, the freckles, the small scar above her eyebrow from a fall 2 years ago, the way her hair curled at the temples. "Mama," Iris said softly, "I'm scared." "Me too, baby. Me too. What if I don't wake up?" The question drove a spike through Marlena's heart. You'll wake up. You have to. We have parks to visit, remember? Promise? Marlena couldn't promise, couldn't lie to her daughter. I promise I'll be right here when you open your eyes. Whether it's tomorrow or in heaven, I'll be right here. Iris smiled, accepting this truth. Will you sing to me? The Polish song Babcia used to sing? Marlena's mother had died 2 years ago, never meeting her only grandchild due to distance and expense. But she taught Marlena the old lullabies, and Marlena had passed them to Iris. She began to sing, her voice soft and trembling, the ancient Polish words filling the small hospital room with the weight of generations of mothers comforting children. A knock interrupted the third verse. Thaddeus stood in the doorway, looking completely out of place in his expensive suit among the cheerful pediatric decorations. He carried a stuffed bear, not expensive or fancy, just a simple brown teddy bear that looked well-loved rather than pristine. "I'm sorry to interrupt," he said quietly. I brought this." He approached the bed tentatively. "Iris? I'm Thaddeus, a friend of your mother's." Iris's eyes widened. "You're the magazine man. Mama showed me your picture." "Guilty." He smiled, holding out the bear. "I brought you something. His name is Courage. He helped me through some difficult times, and I thought maybe he could help you too." Iris took the bear, hugging it close. "He's perfect. Thank you." Thaddeus looked at Marlena, and she saw in his eyes the same terror she felt. The knowledge that tomorrow this beautiful child might not exist anymore. "She's remarkable," he said simply, "just like her mother." The three of them sat together as evening deepened into night, as nurses came and went, as final preparations were made for the surgery that would change everything. And in that small hospital room, surrounded by beeping machines and antiseptic smells, three people from completely different worlds found themselves united by hope, fear, and the desperate prayer that tomorrow would bring healing rather than heartbreak. Friday morning arrived, wrapped in fog so thick it seemed the world itself was holding its breath. At 5 in the morning, nurses came for Iris. Marlena watched them wheel her daughter towards surgery, the small hand waving goodbye until the doors swung closed with terrible finality. The waiting room became Marlena's prison, a sterile space painted in calming blues that did nothing to calm the terror clawing at her chest. Thaddeus sat beside her, silent, just present. His suit looked rumpled, as if he'd slept in it. "She'll be in surgery for 4 to 6 hours, Marlena said to the silence, repeating what Dr. Chen had told her, as if saying it aloud made it more manageable. "They have to stop her heart, replace the defective valve, restart it." Her voice broke on the last word. The image of Iris's heart stopping, even deliberately, even under controlled conditions, was unbearable. "She's strong," Thaddeus said quietly, "just like her mother." Hours crawled by. Other families came and went, some with joy, others with devastation. Marlena watched them, searching for clues about her own outcome. At hour 3, she began to pace, back and forth, her shoes squeaking on polished floor. Thaddeus got her coffee she didn't drink, brought food she couldn't eat. "I was 17 when I found out I was pregnant," Marlena said suddenly. The words had been building inside her, needing release. "My boyfriend said I'd ruined his future, called me stupid." Thaddeus listened. "I could have terminated the pregnancy. It would have been easier. My family wanted me to." She stopped pacing, standing at the window. "But I couldn't, even when ultrasound showed her heart defect, even when doctors said she might not survive." "Why?" "Because she was mine. Because she chose me." Marlena pressed her palm against cold glass. "Every doctor said I was foolish, that I was condemning myself to poverty and heartbreak. They were right." She turned to face him. "But they were wrong about one thing. They said my choice would ruin my life. It didn't. It saved it. Iris taught me what love means, choosing someone even when it costs everything." Before Thaddeus could respond, "Doctor." Chen appeared, still in scrubs, face carefully neutral. Marlena's knees buckled. Thaddeus caught her as Dr. Chen approached. "She made it through," Dr. Chen said, and Marlena collapsed, sobs tearing from her throat. The surgery was successful. Her new valve is functioning perfectly. She's alive, Marlena gasped between sobs. She's alive. She's strong. And barring complications, she'll have a completely normal life. Dr. Chen's composure cracked. She's in recovery. You can see her in an hour. Marlena couldn't speak, couldn't stand, could only cry, years of terror and hope pouring out. Thaddeus held her, let her soak his shirt with tears. When Marlena regained control, Dr. Chen was gone, and they were alone. But everything had changed. The world had color. Air tasted sweet. Hope wasn't cruel illusion anymore. Thank you, Marlena whispered hoarsely, for being here, for the money, for everything. I did the bare minimum to fix what I broke, Thaddeus said. You did the impossible, raised a child alone, in poverty, with grace and integrity that put me to shame. An hour later, in the pediatric intensive care unit, Iris looked impossibly small, surrounded by machines that beeped and hummed. Tubes and wires connected her to equipment, but her chest rose and fell with steady, strong breaths. Marlena approached with trembling legs, touching her daughter's hand. The skin was warm, pulse steady, so different from the weak, irregular heartbeat she'd felt for 7 years. "Hello, my love," she whispered, though Iris remained unconscious from anesthesia. "You did it. Your heart is fixed. Your beautiful, brave heart is finally fixed." She began to sing the Polish lullaby, the same one her mother had sung, the same one Iris requested the night before. The words felt different now, not weighted with fear, but light with gratitude. Behind her, Thaddeus stood in the doorway, watching. Something inside him, frozen since Catherine's death, began to thaw. 2 days later, Iris woke up. Her first words were, "Mama, my chest doesn't hurt anymore." Such simple words, such profound meaning. Over the following week, Iris's recovery was remarkable. Doctors were astounded by how quickly she rebounded. Her color returned, her energy increased. The light in her eyes grew brighter daily. Thaddeus visited every day, bringing books, puzzles, silly jokes that made Iris laugh, something she'd rarely had breath to do before. Marlena watched him transform from the distant, wounded man she'd first met into someone capable of genuine connection. "Why do you come every day?" Marlena asked him one afternoon while Iris napped. "You don't owe us anything more." "Because I want to," he said simply. "Because seeing Iris heal, it's healing something in me too." He faced her fully. "After Catherine died, I convinced myself that loving people was dangerous, that caring led to pain. So I stopped, built walls, made money my only relationship. And now I see that isolation didn't protect me from hurt. It just guaranteed I'd hurt alone." He looked at sleeping Iris. "You showed me that vulnerability isn't weakness, that choosing to care, even when it might cost everything, is the most courageous thing a person can do." 10 days after surgery, Iris was discharged. The day they left the hospital, Marlena carried Iris, who insisted she could walk but was overruled by both mother and doctors, out into autumn sunshine that felt like a gift. Thaddeus walked beside them, carrying the stuffed bear courage and a bag of Iris's belongings. "Where to now?" he asked. "Home," Marlena said, then paused. "Actually, could we go to the park first? Just for a few minutes?" They took a taxi to Central Park, where trees blazed with fall colors. Marlena set Iris down on grass carefully, watching her daughter stand, something she'd rarely had strength to do before surgery. "Can I try?" Iris asked, looking at a small hill. "Try what, baby?" "Running. Can I try running?" Marlena's breath caught. Dr. Chen said Iris could resume normal activities gradually, but 7 years of fear didn't disappear in 10 days. Slowly, Marlena managed, very slowly. Iris took one step, then another. Then, with increasing confidence, she began to run up the small hill, not fast, not far, but running, actually running. Marlena's legs gave out. She sank to her knees on the grass, watching her daughter do something she'd dreamed of for 7 years, but never believed possible. Tears streamed down her face, but these were different tears. Pure, uncomplicated joy. Thaddeus knelt beside her. "She's flying." "Yes," Marlena whispered. "Her heart finally has wings." They stayed in the park for hours, watching Iris explore the world with new energy. She touched trees, examined flowers, chased pigeons, all things healthy children took for granted, but that felt like miracles to a child who'd spent her life too weak to play. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, they sat on a bench, Iris between them, her head resting on Marlena's shoulder, one hand holding courage, the other holding Thaddeus's hand, with the easy trust of a child who'd learned that some people keep their promises. "Mr. Thaddeus?" Iris asked sleepily. "Yes, sweetheart. Are you going to be our friend now, like a real friend?" He looked at Marlena over Iris's head, a question in his eyes. Marlena nodded almost imperceptibly. "Yes," Thaddeus said firmly. "I'm going to be your real friend." "Good," Iris yawned, "because Mama needs friends too. She's always alone, taking care of me. Now that I'm better, she needs someone to take care of her too." The simple wisdom of a 7-year-old child struck both adults silent. 3 months later, the air had turned properly cold, winter claiming New York with characteristic intensity. But inside Thaddeus's penthouse, warmth radiated from unexpected sources. Marlena still cleaned his apartment, but the dynamic had shifted entirely. They talked while she worked, real conversations about books, politics, memories, dreams. Thaddeus had begun cooking, following recipes with the same intensity he once applied to financial deals. Presenting his attempts to Marlena for honest critique, she no longer hesitated to provide. "This pasta is over-salted," she told him one evening, not unkindly. "I know. I got distracted reading the instructions and forgot I'd already seasoned it." He laughed, something he did frequently now. "Catherine used to say I could negotiate billion-dollar deals, but couldn't make toast without supervision. She was right." Marlena smiled, adding cream to the sauce to balance the salt. "But you're learning." Iris visited on weekends, her presence filling the vast penthouse with life and laughter. She drew pictures that Thaddeus framed and hung in his office. She taught him Polish words that he pronounced terribly. She asked endless questions about business and buildings and why rich people buy things they don't need. He had no good answers for that last one. One Saturday afternoon, while Iris napped on the sofa after an exhausting trip to the Museum of Natural History, Thaddeus and Marlena stood at the window overlooking the city. "I've been thinking," Thaddeus said quietly, "about that loan, the $30,000. Marlena stiffened. She'd been making small payments every month, determined to honor her promise, despite how slowly the debt decreased. "I want to forgive it," he continued, "not as charity, as a gift freely given. I can't. Please, let me finish." He turned to face her. "When I tested you that morning, I was trying to prove that money determines character, that desperate people compromise integrity, that my cynicism was justified." He gestured around the expensive apartment. "But you proved something completely different. You proved that character isn't about circumstances, it's about choices. And you chose dignity over desperation, integrity over survival." "Mr. Crawford," "Thaddeus, please. After 3 months, I think we're past formality." "Thaddeus," she corrected softly. "I appreciate what you're saying, but I need to pay that debt, not because you demand it, because I need to prove to myself that I can." He studied her face, seeing the pride and determination that had carried her through years of hardship. "Okay, but let me ask you something else." "What? Will you stop cleaning my apartment?" The question struck her like cold water. "You're firing me?" "No!" He grabbed her hands, panic in his eyes. "The opposite. I'm asking you to stop being my employee and start being something else." "What else?" "My friend. My equal, someone I value not for services rendered, but for who you are." He squeezed her hands gently. "Marlena, you saved my life, not with the test, with everything after. You taught me how to be human again. Let me return the favor. I don't need saving." "No, you don't. You're the strongest person I've ever met." He smiled. "But maybe you don't have to do everything alone anymore. Maybe sometimes it's okay to let someone stand beside you." Marlena looked at their joined hands, at this man who'd started as her employer, become her tormentor, then her unlikely savior, and finally her friend. "What are you really asking?" "I'm asking if you'll let me be part of your life, yours and Iris's, not as a patron or benefactor, as family." The word hung between them, heavy with meaning and possibility. Behind them, Iris stirred on the sofa, sitting up sleepily. "Are you guys done talking? I'm hungry." They both laughed, the tension breaking into something lighter and full of promise. "Yes, sweetheart," Marlena said, going to her daughter. "We're done talking." But she looked back at Thaddeus and smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine, and full of the hope that life sometimes gives second chances to people brave enough to take them. In the end, the lesson was simple, but profound. True wealth isn't measured in bank accounts or possessions. It's measured in character maintained when no one's watching, integrity chosen over convenience, and the courage to remain human even when the world offers every excuse to become otherwise. Marlena had possessed that wealth all along. It just took a cruel test to reveal it, not just to Thaddeus, but to herself. And sometimes the greatest gifts we give aren't things we buy. They're truths we reveal through how we live, when tested by circumstances that offer easier paths, but demand we lose ourselves to take them.